We want to welcome you all here today. It is great to see such a nice, warm, welcoming crowd here for our presentation today. I'd also like to thank the Community Media Center. They're here today and they're streaming the event live. Let's give them a round of applause for joining us. If we could just ask you out of courtesy for our speakers, as well as each of you that are here with us, to turn off your cell phones now or put them on stun, whatever you need to do. We would appreciate that, and that would help to keep today's program moving along. You know, I think it goes without saying, when you see a crowd of people like this at a meeting, I guess as the chamber chair, I'm always curious, are there any first-time attenders, people who have never attended a chamber luncheon or a chamber meeting before? Could you just stand up a second? We'd like to recognize you. Wow. That's great. Also, if you are a non-member, are any non-members here with us as well? We got a few. We want to welcome you as well, and we hope that you're going to find a lot of value in the presentation that's being given today. This is just a small indication of what the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce does. So we hope that as non-members and as first-time attenders, you'll consider joining in with the Chamber of Commerce. The Carroll County Chamber of Commerce has been in existence since 1924. It's an independent nonprofit organization, and it exists to promote a sound economic environment in which our business community can prosper. We help members build strong relationships with other members, and our goal is to make sure that these relationships become lifelong membership or lifelong partnerships in which you can grow and trust each other in business. Let me take care of a few items of business this morning. I'd like to recognize those elected officials who are with us today. If you would just stand as I call your name as well. Commissioner Robin Frazier, is she here? Maybe not, okay. Commissioner Doug Howard, I did see Doug. Doug, welcome. And we also have Westminster Mayor Kevin Utz with us. Kevin, welcome. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize former Chairman of the Chamber of Board, get that straight. And I know there's a rule about you don't single out people, but I've got to do that today for just one of these individuals. Our immediate past chair, Christine Walters. Christine? Christine is the individual who is responsible for today's presentation. And so I really feel like what she did to bring Matt Eversmann to us is just going above and beyond. So we appreciate Christine's efforts in doing that. Steve Aquino Financial Services. Steve's here in the back. Mike Shank with M&T Bank. Mike. Wayne Barnes of Wayne Barnes Long-Term Care Insurance. Wayne. And Dave Bollinger from Barnes Bollinger Insurance. David, welcome. Now, I hope I didn't miss anyone. Did I miss anybody in either of those two categories? Don't think so. Good. It's also important to recognize that the Chamber of Commerce in Carroll County would not be nearly as successful as it is without the help of many volunteers. So at this time, I'd like, if you're a member of the current Chamber Board of Directors, if you would please stand and be recognized. And also, if you're a member of any chamber committee, taking part in any chamber committee, if you would stand as well. Is anyone else here? Wonderful. Great. And then it goes without saying that events like today are successful because of wonderful business partners that we have. So today we have two sponsors, and we'd like to just hear briefly from each of them. Our first sponsor is BB&T Bank, and here to present their message is Chris Rupert, Senior Vice President of BB&T. Welcome, Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me, and Thank you to Sergeant Eversmann for coming out to Carroll County today to talk with us. Interesting, I have a couple young kids, and I was trying to explain to them who I was going to get a chance to meet today and talk with them, and showed them a little bit of the movie, and they were fascinated by that. But now they think I'm meeting Josh Hartnett. So well, I have some more work to do on that. So again, thank you, and thank you to the Chamber for allowing us to do this. To be brief, banking's pretty simple. Banking is about relationships. It's fundamentally a people business, and BB&T has some really great people. We have a whole table full of folks over here that would love to get to know you and your business, spend time talking with you, getting to know what makes your business work and how to make it more successful. So I would ask at some point if that you would find us, or if we ever call you to say we'd love to come see you and talk to you about your business, that you would give us the opportunity and the privilege to do so, and help us help you make your business more successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Our next sponsor message will be given by John Wheatman. He's the Administrator of Operations and the Small Business Development for the Carroll County Department of Economic Development. John.
Thank you, Steve. I spoke to Mike McMullen about a week ago, and in his very sensitive and caring manner, reminding me that sponsor talks are to be short, he said something like, "John, you got like 2 minutes." And I agree with you 100% because I'd much rather hear what First Sergeant Eversmann has to say than what I have to say. But I do want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to sponsor today's event. The Chamber is certainly a very valuable and active member of not only the business community at large, but the Carroll Business Path. And as we work through the Carroll Business Path, and hopefully it's a shrinking minority of people out there that aren't familiar with what we do, but been in existence for over a year now, and as anecdote starts to turn into data, we are seeing that a lot of the small businesses and people with small business ideas and the entrepreneurs in the community are taking advantage of our services. We're getting business counseling and business plan help and help with financing and all of the other resources that we can help bring in and apply. And the results are looking good. We're seeing businesses started, we're seeing signs hung, we're seeing storefronts occupied, and businesses come up and prosper in the community. And as I started with, the Chamber has been a very, very valuable partner in that, and so I thank them for that. It's our pleasure to assist them in this event in terms of sponsorship, and certainly evidence their good work by having someone with the stature of the First Sergeant here to speak. I think it's safe to say he's had a tougher day at work than anybody else in this room could ever expect to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Howard, who has a few words to say.
Thank you, John. Yeah, Mike told me I didn't even have 2 minutes, so that's pretty good. Certainly, it is a pleasure to be here. It's an awe-inspiring opportunity to hear what First Sergeant Eversmann has to say. And when we saw this come up, I wanted to take just a brief moment and make sure that you are aware of a program that the county has and some work that we're doing that I think is particularly appropriate given today's speaker. We started a program about 2 years ago called Celebrating America, and it's an effort to support the schools and the community in finding ways to enhance civics and patriotism and a better understanding of American history and the consequences of events, mostly amongst our young people, but really amongst all of our citizens. One of those endeavors has led to an effort this year, which is still in its pilot program, to provide veterans shuttle service to the VA hospital, something that was unavailable in Carroll County. That is still in its pilot program. We are getting more and more riders every day. It is the very least we can do for those among us that have done such an extraordinary amount for our country and to provide us the freedoms that we have. But our biggest challenge is getting the word out. So if you are in places or have opportunities to help us get that word out, we would very much appreciate it. Also this year, we've stood up a Veterans Advisory Council. Frank Valenti of our Department of Social Services is leading that, and we certainly appreciate his efforts to volunteer in that endeavor. He's bringing resources here for veterans, and we hope to also be able to staff a Veteran Services Officer, which would make us the first county to have one specifically for their own county. So I'm very eager to hear today's speaker. I appreciate the moment to give this message, but I think it's very important, and we hope we'll have your support in getting the word out and supporting that effort as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Thank you, John. And also thank you, Chris. Let's give our sponsors another round of applause. And now for the most important reason that we're here today. Our guest speaker today is retired First Sergeant Matt Eversmann. His legendary leadership while facing the horrors of war cemented his status as an American military hero. Portrayed by Josh Hartnett, Eversmann was immortalized in the epic film Black Hawk Down, which recounts the 18 harrowing hours when U.S. soldiers in Somalia were trapped in a hostile district of Mogadishu. Young Rangers and Delta Force soldiers fought side by side, outnumbered and marked for death by an angry mob until a rescue convoy was mounted. Committed to sharing the lessons he learned in the military, inspirational speaker Matt Eversmann focuses on motivating all people, be they soldiers, students, employees, through values-based leadership, encouraging them to do their best and dedicate themselves to a cause. Matt is Vice President of Allegiant, a health and wellness company. He is responsible for the Allegiant Accountable Care Team made up of clinicians, coaches, and the Account Solutions team. Matt works closely with several nationwide nonprofits that serve veteran causes. Matt Eversmann has received many military decorations, including the Army Service Ribbon, the National Defense Service Ribbon, 8 Army Achievement Medals, 4 Army Commendation Medals, and for his service in Somalia, he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Valor and the Combat Infantryman's Badge. Before his retirement in early 2008, Eversmann served 18 months in Iraq, leading an elite Army Ranger force. We're going to begin Matt's presentation with a video. Join us as we see this.
Sergeant Eversmann, like he's skinny.
Somebody like him, I don't like him. I respect him.
See, what you guys fail to realize is Sergeant was a bit of an idealist. He was dancing this mission down these very moments, don't you, Sergeant?
Look, these people, they have no jobs, no education, no future. I just figured that, we have 2 things we can do. We can either help, or we can sit back and watch America destroy itself on CNN. Right?
I don't know about you guys, but I was trained to fight. You trained to fight, Sergeant?
Well, I think I was trying to make a difference, Kurt.
I'm putting you in charge of this chalk. You got a problem with that?
No, sir.
Make no mistake, once you're in the car market, you're in an entirely hostile district. Don't underestimate their capabilities. Now, we'll be going through friendly neighborhoods before we hit the market. So remember the rules of engagement. No one fires and expired upon. Let's go get this thing done.
Captain, come in. Is this the place?
Sir, he says this is the building.
got a Black Hawk down, we got a Black Hawk down.
Please join me in welcoming retired First Sergeant Matt Eversmann.
Thank you very much. I'll just stand over here. This might be a little better so that you don't get that nasty reverb. But thank you for that very warm welcome. That's a maybe atypical video introduction for a nice, easy, relaxing Thursday afternoon Chamber of Commerce luncheon. But I tell you, a great friend of mine that's far more creative than I am put that clip together right after the movie came out and suggested that I use it whenever I go to speak. And I have to say, admittedly, I was a little thrown off my game with this whole movie nonsense. I mean, it's a very surreal experience, as you can imagine, to have your name being used by Hollywood and to see, albeit not as good-looking a man as me, playing the real Matt Eversmann. It's so absurd, folks. You have to talk about it as if we're enjoying a glass of water or something like that. But I always felt a little, early on, I felt a little unnerved that this was a little self-aggrandizing to promote myself. And my wife, God love her, said to me one day as we were having one of these great heart-to-heart discussions, I said, well, Tori, do you think I should use it? And she looked at me and said, you don't know. We are at war. People need to know that. True story. And she's right. So I use this clip, whether I'm talking about how to bake healthy foods, to discussions about business relationships and leadership, or giving a keynote. Right now, I mean, literally, right now at about 25 minutes till 7 or 8, we have young men and women in Kabul and Kandahar and the southern province of Afghanistan that are getting into Humvees and fearlessly going down a road knowing that there's a deep buried IED somewhere out there. And yet they're going out to do it, to accomplish their mission, to fight and hunt down evil people, to do all the things that we've asked our great assets to do. And because of them, we are able to gather here today and enjoy our camaraderie, talk about business, talk about capitalism, talk about all the things that our enemies despise about us. So as you go about the rest of your day today, and I know you will, but remember this clip, if nothing else, about our great men and women, and certainly all of our veterans. And I know we've got quite a few here in the audience today, so for all the veterans, thank you all for your service and all the heavy lifting, because truly, without you, none of us would enjoy our time together today. So thank you very much for your service. Retired off of active duty in 2008. So I'm sort of like a brand new high school graduate or college graduate, if you will, in this modern workplace. And my wife and I left upstate New York and weaseled our way back down to Baltimore to start this new journey into this business world. And I knew nothing about nothing, which we're going to share a little later on today. But I really didn't know anything about how businesses work, which seems awfully silly that a 46-year-old or a 41-year-old at the time with all this worldly experience wouldn't know, but you don't know unless you experience. And so through a friend of a friend of a friend, I got an email invitation to go down to the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. to attend a networking event. And I didn't know anything about networking events, and it seems sort of silly to me that you would go down and pass out business cards to people that you don't know. But it was at the British Embassy, and I thought that was kind of cool, and it was a highfalutin strategy firm that had invited me. And so I'm like, oh, I'll go down. That sounds kind of cool. And so I went down to the embassy, checked myself in, introduced myself to the host, who was a former Royal Marine, a guy named Sir Robert Fry. And Sir Robert and I chatted for a couple of seconds. He was, very kind to include me, and then sort of set me out to the wolves. And I imagine there was probably about 100 or so fellow networkers there in their, networking garb with their Fortune 500 name tags on there. And there's little old me feeling awfully self-conscious about this networking nonsense that's going on. And I found very quickly that I knew nothing about how the whole thing worked. I mean, I didn't. You'd say hello to people, but I had no business experience. I couldn't really I felt intimidated. I couldn't really chat with them about much. And so I sort of resigned myself that this was a wasted event, and better luck next time, and just don't go to these things. And so we all gathered around, and Sir Robert comes to the lectern and brings us to what we all know as the pitch. He's given us his big hook about whatever it is his firm does, and he starts talking about something of which I have no idea, and just blah 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 blah, and everybody that is nodding their heads viciously, like this guy is the gift of the Magi, and I'm just nodding my head along because I don't know what. Truly, I'm not lying. I don't know what this guy's talking about. It's all ether zone strategy stuff that I guess you smart businessmen and women all know. And I'm thinking about whatever he's talking about making no sense. Like, am I going to make the train back tonight? Because that's a long cab ride from on and on and on. And all of a sudden, he blurts out these two words that make my ears perk up. He says something, 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 strategic shock. And I thought, wow, I don't know what he was talking about beforehand, but it got my attention. This must be sort of military. This must be something. I mean, strategic and shock, it's sort of sounds like the Army. And he went on to talk about this. And if you're familiar with this term, I wasn't, but I share it with you because it made a lot of sense. Strategic shock is when this catastrophic event happens in your life, whether it's your personal or your business life. But it's something so bad and it happens so quickly that you find yourself on this precipice of fight or flight. You can't make a whole lot of decisions other than, go forward or go back. You can't staff it out to your team to figure out who's responsible for doing something right or wrong. You can't do any of that. You absolutely must take action. And he went on to talk about it, how it'll change the way you think conventionally. He talked about, for example, 9/11. He talked about the credit default swaps. He talked about disasters and tsunamis and all these horrific things that happen. And as he's saying this, I'm thinking, my goodness, this is just like life on the battlefield. Nothing ever goes as planned, and catastrophic things happen that we got to deal with. And he finished up, he said there are 3 characteristics of this strategic shock. He says it's unpredictable, it's indiscriminate, and it's ubiquitous. And I'm just, drinking this all in, taking notes like a madman. And I'm like, that's the best explanation about what life on the battlefield is like, in my opinion, to what it must be like out here, in the civilian world. And so he finished up whatever he was saying, and then he asked for some questions. And I always get very nervous if people ask for questions and nobody says anything. So I sort of felt obligated to throw up my hand, and I said, Sir Robert, my question is this. If you, he also threw out that we're going to face it, that's going to happen again, folks. Something bad is on the horizon, and he finishes up with the what are you going to do about it? So I asked the question, if it's coming, if this bad event is going to happen, where do we spend our focus? Where do we put all of our time and money? Is it in our people, or is it in our process? And he looked right back at me without missing a beat. He says, First Sergeant, what do you think? You know, so now all these knuckleheads are looking at me, and I'm standing there like a dope. And the only thing I can just choke right out is it's our people. You know, our people are what's going to get us through a crisis. Our processes will fail sometimes. Our technology will fail. A private will run over the power cord. They'll back over the generator. They'll put regular in the diesel, whatever it is, it'll all go kerplooey at the worst possible time. And how do we get through it? Well, it's our people. So as I talk for the next few minutes and share some thoughts about our battle in Mogadishu, and really, I guess the overarching so what is, you know, how does it apply to us all today? You know, what does it really mean for all of us? I mean, there's probably no greater subject matter to allow somebody to get self-righteous and pontificate the most other than leadership, maybe followed by healthcare, because we all are experts and we all want to, you know, break a leg to tell you how much we know. And as an old Special Forces friend of mine said, you know, I can't tell you anything you don't already know, but I can share with you what I've learned. And so I want to share a little bit with you about what I've learned about leadership from the battlefield and maybe what it might mean to you as you think about doing business in the future with this impending strategic shock. When I was getting ready to get out of the military, a lot of very well-intentioned, well-meaning, great mentors that had paved the way, you know, from the military to the corporate life before always said, Matt, when you get out, you got to understand it's not like the Army. They don't do things like the Army out here. It's not a little Ranger battalion, more's the pity. I mean, it's not the Army. They don't cut their hair and shine there, but you got to understand that. And so immediately going into this new life, I realized, man, you know, it's definitely not the Army. And my only database is the Army, so everything out here I must have to relearn. So I sat on my hands for about 8 months, sort of nodding my head, thinking, well, this is certainly a different technique that you might be applying that I wouldn't particularly choose 8 months ago, but, you know, that must be the way we do business. And on and on and on, you can see where this is heading, in my humble opinion. You know, we can learn a lot from the experiences in the crucible that we took from the battlefield. Because after all, it's always going to be about people. So I got to share with you a quick story about some great people that I was privileged and honored to work with. I will tell you, there's certainly not enough time today to go through bullet by bullet and minute by minute about our experience in Mogadishu. If you haven't seen the movie or read the book, Black Hawk Down, I would tell you, they're both pretty well done. The book, written by a guy from Baltimore, Mark Bowden, gave a very good 360-degree view of all the events that happened on October 3rd and October 4th, 1993. Jerry Bruckheimer out in Hollywood bought the screenplay, bought the rights and made it into a screenplay and turned it into this movie called Black Hawk Down, which is not necessarily chronologically accurate, but it's pretty authentic. So between the two, depending on how much time you want to commit, you can get a good idea of the real story. The thumbnail version for our purposes today, I'll break down sort of succinctly so we can sort of cut to the chase. This group of special operations soldiers were put together back here in the States with a mission to go to Mogadishu, Somalia, and capture a guy named Mohammed Adid. And Mohammed Adid, trust me when I say, was an evil barbarian, a warlord, terrorist. He was just a no-goodnik, persona non grata, everything that you could think in a genteel setting to say he's a bad guy. Killed a bunch of UN workers, and nobody in the world, literally, would go and try and capture him, except for the United States. The United States said, we will take this mission, we'll go capture him. So they put together this special operations task force of Delta Force soldiers, SEAL Team 6 sailors, Air Force pararescuemen and combat controllers, Rangers from the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and aviators from the Task Force 160, the Special Operations Aviation Unit in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That's the package we're going to send. And what we're going to do when we get there, folks, we're going to capture this guy in a house, or we're going to capture him, in a convoy. And quite succinctly, our Delta guys will go in and they'll be the assaulters. They're going to do the capturing inside the building. And our Rangers, that's my guys and me, we're going to surround the house, isolate it so bad guys can't run in or can't run out. And we're going to have a ground force of soldiers and Rangers and some SEALs that will drive in Humvees and great big cargo trucks through the city to be our reinforcements. And all this is going to happen while the aviation unit, the Night Stalkers, fly us to the objective, to the target, in the Black Hawks and the Little Birds. And as you saw, the big helicopter is the Black Hawk. You can put about 15 passengers in it. The small bird is, the Little Bird. It's very tiny. It's just got a pilot and co-pilot, and they put benches on the outside of the cockpit, and the passengers actually ride on that bench, strapped into the to the mainframe of the helicopter, and they fly wherever they need to go. And the beauty of it all is that in this three-dimensional battlefield now with, big, tall, 3 or 4 story buildings, or doggone cell phone towers or telephone towers, whatever it is, you might not be able to drive there quickly, but you sure can fly. And if you can't fly and land this thing, what you do, you throw ropes out of the helicopter and you slide down the ropes right on top of the target, and you do your business. They call it fast roping. That's, you grab this thing, slide down it like a fireman, put all your kids on the ground, and you go about your business. You can do anything from just a couple of feet above the ground to, they make 120-foot long fast ropes. It's a pretty great method of insertion. But it's just that, it's a method of insertion. You can only go one way, you can only go in, you can't climb back up to get out. But we know all this going in. We've had a couple of good missions prior to, since we've been in country. We're going to capture this guy, and it's going to all, be hunky-dory, and we'll be done. And purposely, folks, I'm sort of glossing through because we're a little short on time. So suffice to say, we've done a couple of missions to try and capture this cat, and realizing that capturing one man in a city of 2 million is a pretty difficult task to do. A lot of stars got to line up. The intelligence has got to be perfect. The situation's got to be just right in order to be successful. But we're making headway. To this date, I have been the second in charge of the men on my helicopter. All right, that's sort of important because I'm the 2IC. I look to my boss for everything. I look to him, in this case, to give me the commander's intent. I look to him, my leader, to give me a task and purpose. I look to him to tell me everything that I need to know about my job and my responsibilities on this battlefield. That's how it's got to work. And so I wake up one morning in the end of September of 1993. I wake up one morning and I see that his cot is empty. He's not here. There was a Red Cross emergency, and he was sent home to the States. Somewhere in the middle of the night, he left. And so in this doctrinal world of the military and the regimented hierarchy, the second in command, the 2IC, which is me, now becomes the OIC, the officer in charge. That's our succession plan. And you know from the private where you stand between you and the commander-in-chief. You can see it everywhere. It's very simple to follow. In this little video clip that my friend put together, it just so happens they have the little coronation scene where, the commander talks to young Josh Hartnett and says, I'm putting you in charge, you got a problem with that. And of course, for Hollywood, this young, introspective Sergeant Eversmann sort of mumbles, no, I got no problem with that, or some mamby-pamby answer like that. When in reality, there was nothing more than the commander saying, Sergeant Hardy's not here, you're in charge. Don't mess it up, to paraphrase him. And I said, I won't, mess this up, sir, and off you go. Come back, start going through our plan. We know our drill, we know what we're going to do, we know the commander's intent, we know our mission, we know our task and purpose, and all these repetitive things that leaders got to know, has now been passed to me. And so now what I realize is that, when the next mission happens, when this next thing inevitably happens, when I tell 2 of my soldiers to go through that door and see what's on the other side in that red zone, and it's the right call, we have potentially just changed Easter for everybody. Birthdays may never be the same. There are parents, there are wives, there are brothers, sisters, girlfriends, grandparents, you name it. This diagram, if you will, of lives that are now going to be touched by the decisions of the leader on the ground are exponentially bigger. And with that comes a tremendous responsibility. And that, my friends, was not lost one iota to me. In fact, it wasn't the idea of doing the mission that was scary. It was the thought that now when I make a decision, there is a cause and effect. There is a potential sadness that could come along. And even if it's the right decision, there's a reality that might not be very pleasant. And that is a burden, if you will, that all leaders have to shoulder. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But I consoled myself realizing that, I've got great men working for me. And I've seen them on the battlefield, and I know they can do their job. And as long as I do what I'm paid to do, to be a problem solver, make sure that the commander's intent is followed to accomplish our mission, we'll probably be okay. And on Sunday, October 3rd, we got the word that 2 of Mohammed Adid's top guys were going to be meeting, and we got the green light to go. A beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, sunny Sunday afternoon, unlike Thursday in Westminster today, but it was a beautiful, beautiful day, and I'll never forget. We loaded into the helicopters for a quick 3-minute flight to the target, flew out over the Indian Ocean like you saw in this clip, did a high bank to the south, watching these beautiful waves. It was like the Caribbean, just crashing down on the sandy beach. I'll never forget it, like one of those just photos stamped in your mind. Like, it's amazing. We're going to war, and yet I'm looking at the breakers on the beach. And believe it or not, it's big Italian influence in the past. It's just lovely, unmolested countryside, even in the desert. So we're flying up about 2,000 feet, running about 130 knots. I'm listening to the pilots on the headset. They give the 1-minute call. 1 minute we start the assault. We're going to go from 2,000 feet down to about 40 feet to make this insertion in 59 seconds. They do their thing, and they're just screaming down. You're watching the boys. They're all looking at the door gunners behind the guns, protecting us. And you're watching their faces. And you don't look at your watch to see, how long, an hour, how long 59 seconds is. You just sort of go through your mental checklist about what you got to do when you get on the ground. Get a head count, call the boss, check in, adjust, adjacent units, visual, all that kind of thing. You're going through that as a leader in your checklist, and you get through that about once or twice before they give the 30-second count. And at 30 seconds now, it just sort of, you're looking through a straw, and your heart is beating, your adrenaline's pumping. You can feel the power of these helicopters going in. Because what we're going to do, we're going to break formation, and they're going to just dance all over the target and put all the soldiers in where they're supposed to go. And so you're mentally trying to prepare now for this, which is just, how do I get out of the helicopter? That's all you can think about. How do I get out? And because it's 30 seconds, even if the president himself got on the radio and said, abort this mission, you can't. You're going to be on the ground. And then we'll figure it out. So you resign yourself to this fact. You can go through this checklist once or twice. And as I'm thinking about how I just want to get off this platform, the helicopter that I'm on stands up on its tail and comes to a hover, and the pilot says, I can't see anything. What do you mean you can't see anything? That's not the anticipated response you're looking from the pilot and co-pilot. It's like, I can't see anything. You look around, and the helicopter is enveloped in all this dust and debris, because all the helicopters that flew in before it had just pushed all the dirt skyward. You know, however many millions of dollars we have in avionics, they can't see it. So the pilot says, listen, Matt, we'll put you on the ground right here, toss the ropes, get on the ground, follow the helicopter, go 3 blocks, you'll be in the right spot. You're like, roger that. Okay. I mean, what else are you going to do? Say no? So the boys start going out. They start doing this fast rope descent. I'm putting on my gear, and as I'm putting it on, the helicopter just sort of bumps a little bit. You know, enough that you got to catch your balance. Rightens itself back up, waddle over, grab the rope, start to slide down. I'm thinking, my gosh, we're awfully high up. I mean, I can't even see the ground because there's so much dust. And so as I'm sliding down and I'm going through these clouds and I'm trying to keep my eyes, focused on which way the helicopter is going so I can get on the ground and capture my men or gather my men and start going, I finally break through this dust cloud and I see on the ground right below me one of my soldiers. Already been shot. I haven't even gotten on the battlefield and I've already got a wounded kid. And I get down and I see this guy and he's just in terrible shape. His lung is collapsed. His blood is coming from every orifice of his head and body. And I'm thinking, my gosh, where'd he get shot? I got a young 20-year-old, medic working on him. And I'm standing there like, where'd he get shot? And he said he didn't get shot, he fell. Now, what are you talking about? And sure enough, we've seen the video. He grabbed the rope, started to slide out, and as he did, the helicopter canted just a little bit, lost control, and fell 60 feet. Miraculous. Absolutely. I didn't see it from start to finish, but I witnessed a miracle. Without a doubt, folks. I mean, this kid's still breathing. And the young kid that's working on him, again, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, making it all happen. We got to get him out of here, Sergeant. He's going to die. Good enough for me. Turn to my radio guy, Jason Moore. Moore, call the boss. Immediate medevac. Tell him we need it right now. Lit urgent. Whatever the vernacular was. Specialist Moore turns to me and says, Sergeant Eversmann, we got no comms. Radio doesn't work. Like, you're kidding me. To paraphrase that. And he's like, I can receive, I can't transmit. And all this has happened, folks, in, 25 seconds. And I'm standing there taking stock of it all. And I realize I'm in the wrong spot. I've got a lit urgent casualty that the medic keeps telling me is going to die. We've got no good communications with the boss. And now I realize we're getting shot at. We're taking fire from the enemy, from our north, from our west, from our east. And it's all happening all at once. And I would tell you, as much as our discussion today is about leadership, at that particular moment, I had nothing that I could give the men. I mean, nothing. I could not blurt out an idea. And I don't know how long it was, probably a few seconds, other than this is really, really bad. I mean, truly, this is really bad. I'm scared, I'm everything, but, one of these things is enough of a, monkey wrench in your bottle works that you've got to change hey, we're in the wrong spot, now we got to move a couple of blocks, that throws our timing off. Our comms went down, but we're in the right spot. Okay, you can deal with that. Even having a casualty in the right spot, we can deal with it. But when you compound that, threefold, your head almost explodes. And then coupled in that you're taking fire and it's very scary and your muscle memory is just that. But if you haven't been trained on it, you're probably not going to think of any grand ideas, in a crisis. And then as I'm standing there watching all this, though, I notice some movement and I see it's my two ICs, my young sergeants, Jim Telsher and Casey Joyce, two young E5s. Jim's from Ohio and Casey's from Plano, Texas. And they are just bringing the heat to the enemy. I haven't said one word. Not one iota of a thought of a word has crossed the synapse in my mind. And yet these guys are fighting the enemy. They've got the heavy gun going. They've got the grenade launchers going. They're bringing everything we got on the enemy. They're doing exactly what they should have been doing. And I remember as I'm standing there, first of all, like, we're going to be okay. Shame on me, because I don't need to fight their fight. That's what my subordinates do. Again, the commander's intent, the mission, the task and purpose, they know their jobs. They'll do it. Matt, do what you're supposed to do. Solve the problems for them. And this is actually very simple. You know what? If they can't come to us, we'll go to them. And so if you watch this movie, there's a great scene where young Sergeant Joyce comes over. In real life, I called him over and said, get the aid and litter team, move them down to the objective, tell the commander we got no comms, and off we'll go. And Sergeant Joyce does it, thumbs up, roger that, Sergeant, put this kid on this litter, and off they go, literally through a hail of bullets. I mean, it is sort of like the movies. And they're fighting bad guys while they're running. They put them down, they shoot, they pick them up and do their thing. As he's leaving now, I can focus on my leader task, what the commander needs me to do on this street corner. And even though I can't move right now, doctrinally the term is we're fixed. The enemy's got us where we can't move, but we can still accomplish our mission. That's to prevent them from access to the objective. So we rearrange our guys, we've got our, using all of our assets as best we can. And I'll never forget, I was hunkered down, behind this car. And we'd been fighting through for a while. It shot out all the glass and the windshield, and the tires were flattened. And I'm just sort of, when the enemy would get up, they'd all shoot at once. So you'd just hide for a little bit, make yourself really small. And as I'm sitting there, I'm watching the boys. And, they're these great young men, and today over in Afghanistan, young women as well, that are doing their job. And I'm thinking, our training really works, which is such a novel idea to say that on a battlefield. But I remember thinking to myself, I've seen the men do this in training before. And it might have been in Scotland or in Thailand or in Hawaii or in Fort Polk or someplace, but I've seen what we did with them before, and I've seen why it works, and it all makes sense now. And as I'm watching this thing, scary as it is, I'm looking at the boys, and as the leader, watching my subordinates do their job gave me I wouldn't say it makes you feel braver, or I wouldn't say it makes you lose your fear, but I know it made me feel like, propped me up as the leader to do my leadership job. And as all this happens, I turn around a couple of seconds later, and there's Sergeant Joyce, standing, hiding behind this car with me, and he's all out of breath from the 3-block run down, the 3-block run back, and all the fighting that's gone on, and he gives me the report. Todd Blackburn has been given over to the senior medic. He's gonna live. Sergeant Joyce saved that kid's life. We like to think that Sergeant Eversmann, the leader, told him to do this, and he did it, and I'm a great leader for it. Well, no, I gave him some purpose and direction. And this young man, literally, I'm putting you right in harm's way, man. Good luck. And he did it. Selfless service. The story has actually quite a long way to go here, but for our purposes today, I stop with this little vignette for a couple of reasons. And this is literally, a couple of minutes, maybe all totaled, an hour of this battle. And the reason I stop, I want to tell you, in that story, as I've thought about it for years and years and years, you get a great picture of everything associated with leadership. And so when you start at the top, what you see are men, this team that understands their mission, even down to the youngest private. Why are we in Somalia? What are we here to do? What's the task and what's the purpose? What are we doing here? And if a private can't explain it to the boss, then it's way too complicated. So when people talk about, your elevator pitch. When people talk about the mission statement of the company, can the employees, regurgitate this with some coherent thought? And again, going back to my military database of one, I will tell you more often than not, people out here in this civilian world really don't know what their company does. And so when we talk about this discussion and the so what of it all, I will tell you, how can you get through a crisis if your people truly don't know what your company does? And if they do, good for you. But if you give a critical eye, I would suggest that some of your folks might need to be tightened up a little bit. What you also get from this little vignette is some thoughts about followership. Followership in the military sometimes gets overlooked, and I think it gets a bad name because follower, nobody wants to be the follower. We all want to be in charge. We all want to be the leader. But you can't have a horizontal playing field of leaders or a horizontal team of leaders. Somebody's got to have this pesky thing called responsibility. Everybody's got accountability, everybody's got responsibility, but somebody always has to be in charge. That's why we call them the leader. They do all the stuff. They take the biggest burden of everybody. And in this particular case, on this particular afternoon, at that particular time, that responsibility fell to me. And I only say that to you folks, again, not to be so self-righteous and championing Matt Eversmann. Because I'll tell you, it's a scary, scary feeling to be on the battlefield. No matter how much you care about all your other boys, there's still a little bit of fear for yourself that goes along with it. And that moment when I said, I'm telling you, hey, I watched the men and I saw what training and value of training does for us and we're going to be okay, scared out of my wits. Scared beyond belief. And I found out later on as we were debriefing each other, and I said to one of the young guys, I said, we were talking about this particular moment. And I said to him, I got to be honest with you, man. That might have been the scariest moment because even as I'm watching all this good stuff happen, there's still in the mind is this overarching feeling that we might die very shortly. And that's just, you're almost apoplectic. But I guess I must have been standing or must have been looking like I knew what I was doing because this young soldier said to me, wow. And I remember saying, you all look like you were just cool as cucumbers. And I remember this young guy said to me, he goes, gosh, I was so scared, Sergeant Eversmann. I looked over and I saw you, doing your stuff. And I realized, if you're not scared, I'm not scared. True story. This symbiotic relationship between the leader and the follower, you have. Even if you got to fake it sometimes, when in charge, be in charge. But you get that from this deal. You see what your subordinates can do. If they're well-trained, well-disciplined, well-loved, but overall they know what it is they're supposed to be doing. And again, not to be rhetorical, but to throw out to you. Small shops, we wear a bunch of different hats. Bigger shops, we all get mired into sort of the Dilbert world of, whatever it is we do. But overall, we're all still the same kind of people in a different uniform. And so it asks the question to you all, do your people know what it's like to be a good follower? And if they don't, we need to get them there because when this crisis, this strategic shock happens, all eyes are going to be on you. And you, in turn, got to be that human pitchback of information that's going to make them go out and do their job. And if they don't know how to do it to this level, it's going to fail. And that's a difficult thing. We could go on and on and on, minute by minute and day by day about everything. And like I said, there's no greater topic that lets people verbally waterboard you about all the great knowledge that we all have about leadership. All I can tell you is what I've seen and what I saw in this crucible and what really, really works. But I'll leave it with this as we finish up here, and I certainly will open it up for some questions in a minute. I've thought long and hard over the last few years since I've been retired about this very subject, and this relationship between the individuals and the environment in which we work. And remember when I said everybody told me, Matt, it's not the little Ranger Battalion out here. And I said, more's the pity, sort of, chuckling. But it really is unfortunate Because when you look at elite organizations, and I say that hopefully not sounding elitist, but wouldn't you want to be the best? Wouldn't you want to really win on the battlefield every day out here in this world? I mean, I ask you, do you want to win? Because, like Vince Lombardi says, winning isn't a sometimes thing, it's an all the time thing. And certainly on the battlefield, you can't come in second place. It doesn't fly. It's unsatisfactory. The enemy needs to be defeated every single day. And the more steam I gather, the more I learn about life out here in this new world, the more convinced I am that the lessons from this battlefield are directly applicable here, because we're talking about people, and people are what's going to get us through this strategic shock. So don't we want to have the best people go into battle for us every day? We absolutely do. And if we're going to do it, then we've got to take care of our people, and we've got to train our people. We've got to do all the things that you can read in any doggone business book, that's out there. And I will tell you, I believe now they all stole it from the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or Marine, whatever. They took it from this 230-something-year-old institution that's been proven in battle several times. And what it is, they develop their individuals a certain way, and they have a culture that supports it. So for instance, I will tell you, every single one of us, every single one of our employees, every single one of our Rangers, like Casey Joyce, need to be selfless servants. And I'm preaching, I absolutely am. You've got to put the needs of others first. Because if it's not, it's about you. And people are little rascals, and they'll do silly things when they're in a crisis. If you don't have the right environment of people putting the needs of others first, you're gonna fail. Call it great customer service, call it whatever you will, but if you leaders out here think it's about you first, I'm sorry to tell you it's wrong. Go to the end of the line. It's always about other people, just like Casey Joyce. Your environment at work needs to support that. And obviously you as leaders need to champion it every single doggone day. That's what you get paid for. So be selfless in your service and be courageous in all you do, physically and morally. And it's hard. Depending on what profession you're in, some you might have to climb up with the linemen, or you might have to wash the windows on the 40th floor, whatever it is. There's the physical courage that we have to have. But more often than not, I think it's the moral courage that leaders must have, to say no to my boss, to say no to the board, politely, professionally, but to say, I have a different opinion. I don't think that's going to work, and it's an unpopular thought, but I want to tell you why. And hopefully, if it's a professional organizations like the Ranger Regiment, where we embrace this kind of warrior roundtable mentality, we will appreciate a differing point of view. We will all be better for it. We might not, the boss might say, well, thanks for your opinion, I appreciate it, but we're doing it this way. But at least you had an opportunity to voice your concern. And I tell young lieutenants and future lieutenants, if it's not illegal, unethical, or immoral, you're obligated to do what the boss says. But at least let's build an atmosphere out here where we can say, boss, we got to zig this way, I think. Technology is pushing, whatever it is in your industry, we got to be willing to move a little bit. Enemy's got to vote, we got to change. And if you're too sinfully prideful that you won't listen to and know, you're wrong. And trust me, they're out there. They're you all know that. They are out there. So be courageous and encourage courage within the workplace. Try new things, and also be dutiful. Fulfill your obligations. I will be here. I will do that. Whatever you got to do that. Do what you say you're going to do. These 3 golden rules. Those of you that have been in the Army know that we have 7 Army values. These are actually 3 of them. And they make the most sense to me, and when I think about my time on the battlefield of Mogadishu, this is what I come up with. No matter what happens, from now until the day we all retire, the one constant in our life is that we will, more often than not, spend most of our time with people. That's what we do. You know, whether it's the bankers, the lawyers, whatever it is, school teachers, nurses, we are going to spend time with people. And I'll close and I'll throw this to you. One of the big observations I've had since I've been out in this new life is that there is a tremendous lack of civility in the workplace, in general. I mean, just out here. You know, you get on the bus at the airport and you say hello to the driver, and everybody looks at you like you have, you know, horns growing out of your head. You know, you say hello to the bellhop, thank you for moving my bags. And I don't, again, be so self-righteous that I'm the most polite guy here, but, you know, people don't say yes and no and thank you, yes sir, no sir, and, you know, all that golden rule stuff. They don't. And I think, how on earth is it that I'm going to spend the next 20-something years of my life dealing with people that are not going to at least be respectful in our engagements? You know, customer, brokers, whatever it is. That's unsatisfactory. And that shows a colossal lack of leadership somewhere in that doggone food chain. That we allow our representatives, our acolytes, our stewards of our companies to deal with people in an uncivil manner. And truly, I would tell you, you can figure out all the rest. You're subject matter experts in your fields, and I got it, and I'm just trying to throw out a couple other things I've observed from the battlefield that you might put in your kit bag to think about life, you know, when this strategic shock comes. But I would truly, if you forget everything else, the one thing I would tell you, we need to work on our civility. Civility will change the atmosphere. The atmosphere will breed and foster great ideas, and your 20-year-olds to your 80-year-olds in the workplace are going to give you great, great stuff, and you're going to beat the enemy if you put your mind to it and you got great people. That's what I saw on Sunday, October 3rd, 1993, with a bunch of great young men. That's what I saw in 15 months in Iraq, in southwest Baghdad, with a bunch of great young men. And that's what we got going on overseas today in Kabul and Kandahar with a bunch of great young men and women. So with that, I thank you for making your time to come out today on a snowy, blustery, rather nasty, typical Maryland weather. I don't know what you people have done to the water around here, but I am very thankful and blessed that you all came out today. And I appreciate your time. I wish you all the best of luck in whatever pursuit you go through. And certainly it would be remiss if I didn't say, this is a great organization here in Carroll County. You know, and from the moment I was, Christine approached me about 6 or 7 months ago, all the way up to my back and forth with Mike until the first second I walked through the door at 11 o'clock, and he strode across the room with a big grin and an outstretched hand. I'm like, this is good doggone folks. So I would look forward to coming back and doing business with you all sometime. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for everything and supporting our great men and women. God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.
We actually have 5 minutes if we have a couple of questions for Matt. We've got one in the back. We have Tim, if you could bring the microphone back there. So there'll be one more after this.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question.
It could be me. No,
I would like to encourage you maybe to go into politics, because I feel like most of our politicians are unethical and immoral. And I think maybe a man like you, a person like you, you know, could do us some good. Because I think we're in some bad shape here.
Well, ma'am, thank you very much. That is very flattering that you would suggest that. And I will tell you, you know, it sounds like such a ridiculous thing when somebody says you ought to think about going into politics. And I'm like, maybe somebody would drop a brick on my head before you would think about that. You know, quite honestly, I've thought about it. You know, as a veteran and being out in this new world, and not always necessarily from the leadership perspective, if you will, but I'm wondering, you know, what the heck are our politicians doing for us? I mean, truly, what are they doing? What are they doing for the state of Maryland? What are they doing for Carroll County or Baltimore? And, you know, we all can wax about it all the time. You know, it's an awfully big undertaking, and it's a big change for a family and all that. And I have honestly thought about it just because I would love to see some different development in Maryland, and I think this is such a great state with such wonderful people and all the like. But quite honestly, I think, you know, that's a big lifestyle, and I take my hat off to any politician on whatever side of the aisle he or she may be, you know, to take on that mantle. It's a lot that we ask of them, and I would admit I don't think that all the times they're always prone to listen to the likes of little old us at times, but I'm hopeful that we will exercise our rights, as I tell particularly young college kids. You know, I might not like the outcome of the vote in any given issue on any given election day, and my party might lose, you know, every day and twice on Sunday, but you know, I myself, as many other veterans will attest, you know, put your lives on the line so that we can enjoy the freedoms of this country. And one thing is for certain, you got to spend about 3 seconds outside of this territory between the Atlantic and the Pacific, in Canada and Mexico, to realize this is the greatest spot in the world. And it is truly because of the people exercising their rights. And I guess I console myself with that. I might never ever get into politics, but you know, our system, I do believe it's fantastic. And on that note, I would just throw this out to you, and this is party agnostic. Don't drink all the Kool-Aid all the time. I mean, don't. You're gonna get angry. Back to my civility comment. You'll get very angry, and you will find yourself thinking, certainly during, for Christians this week, very un-Christian thoughts about people. And I mean that sincerely. Don't. You know what? Sequestration, you know what? We're still going to wake up tomorrow. The sun's going to come up. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have an opinion, but just don't let it consume you. So that's my public service message for today. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service, first I'd like to say. And my question is more to leadership than commerce. How do you, sir, personally feel about bringing the draft back to the United States?
The question, folks, was about, you know, what is my opinion, what do I feel about bringing the draft back to the United States? When I said leadership might be the contentious issue, this might be the second most contentious issue about it. My personal feeling is I think there should be obligatory service for men and women of conscriptable age. And I will go so far as to say, from my first sergeant perspective, what I don't need are a bunch of knuckleheads that don't want to serve. You know, I don't want to take people that don't want to serve downrange to fight bad guys. I want men and women that want to get after it with me. That's one thing. However, we have plenty of opportunities within our doggone federal system that need good laborers. We have national parks that need to be policed up, cleaned up, modified, all that kind of stuff. We need doggone, you know, help at the, you know, any federal institution needs some, let's face it, maybe lower paid laborers to learn something about that particular department and to give back to our country. You know, we just do. And so I don't mean to speak with a forked tongue. I personally, you know, I don't need, as I said, I don't need this onslaught of people that don't want to be there, that only know they got a couple of years to serve. But I also think we could position this policy that, hey, listen, you know, you spend 2 or 3 years in the Forest Service, or you're at the Treasury Department, or wherever, learning some of the fundamentals here. One, you got some good experience on your resume. 2, maybe we'll forgive some of your college loans like you do in the military. And 3, you know what? You're doing just what John Kennedy said. And you will in turn pay that back, and we can perpetuate this idea of service to our country on and on. Because quite honestly, and this is very selfish of me, to come back at 41, show up in Baltimore, and all my peers, so to speak, who are all hotshots at T-Row and Legg Mason and wherever, that have had a 20-year head start on me, and again, as I say that, slap me for being a baby, but you think, man, you know, I was out there slugging it through, you know, some horrible place somewhere, doing something very painful, and, you know, you're driving a Bentley. I mean, you know, that you kind of scratch your head. Now, reality is that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, that I made a choice. I made a decision to serve my country and carry a gun and jump out of a plane. They made a decision to go to Wharton and go on and do things, and they do great things for us. But it would be great moving forward if we knew that everybody had a little skin in the game of making and keeping our country the fantastic place that it is. And it doesn't require everybody carrying a gun. You know, when you think that, and I'm going to shut up in a second, when you think that here we are in 2013 and we still are scratching our heads like a bunch of white-faced monkeys trying to figure out if we've got anybody that can speak Pashtun, 12 years later, are you kidding me? Go down to Johns Hopkins. I mean, or McDaniel. Or, I mean, I guarantee you, we got kids that are fluent in Arabic and do whatever it is we need to do, but they have no desire to join the military. Get them into the Department of State. Get them into the CIA. Get them into NSA. Get them someplace for a couple of years to help lighten the load. I mean, that's just foolish that we are, you know, looking at a knucklehead like Eversmann and saying, hey, here's Rosetta Stone, buddy. Salam alaikum, try and figure it out. I mean, you know, come on. But if we had this pool of kids that we could say, guess what, you know, your first assignment, you're going to be a translator for us. How much easier would it be? Anyway, I could bore you to tears on all this, but thank you very much for being so kind and generous, and I wish you all the best. Have a great rest of your week and a good weekend and a happy Easter. And Mike, thank you very much for including me.
So inspirational, so inspirational. It's great to have somebody like Matt here who's a real hero, as we would define heroes. You know, a lot of times we think heroes, they're either from the military, they're from the sports world. But it's hard to follow up a guy like that, but I will say that every one of you is a hero. There is a hero to someone in your world. And if you're not, you should be, either at work, friends, at home, to your kids, to your parents, brother, sister, and you can make just as much of an impact on their lives as Matt's made on some of the lives that he, to the luck of the folks who are with him, we're happy to be with him there. I just want to have another round of applause for Matt Eversmann. Also, how many veterans do we have? How about like to have the veterans stand so we could have a little round of applause and recognition for them? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Also want to thank our sponsors today. We can't do these meetings without you folks. Thank you for coming alongside of us. To the people at the Portico, Johansson's for the food. Isn't the Portico a beautiful place? How about a round of applause for these guys? What a great job. CMC, who always seems to show up for our best meetings. They have been streaming this thing live. How about a round of applause for them? Couple quick chamber announcements. We're taking applications for our Leadership Carol class of 2014. See me or go on our website, please. Also, the chamber is trying to put together a trip to Tuscany, and there should be a flyer where you're sitting. We'd love to have you. And Ellen Manning's in the back. Stand up, Ellen. The chamber's putting together a map of Carroll County, and she's looking for people to advertise in it. So see her before you leave. Other than that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, one and all, for coming.